Hello everyone, can I be heard clearly?
Yep, loud and clear, PM.
Let me just set up my timer for a sec. Thanks. Right, I can't see myself. Alright. Okay, hold on. Hi, my name's Hannah. Pronouns are she and her. Um, before I start, hello Kuya Albert. Siguro shoutout na lang sa lahat ng friends that's watching. Anyway, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. If I were a journalist, I'd rather shoot myself than keep the guilt and burden of withholding the information for the rest of my life. I have 3 points of framing here. One, what are the implications of you being a journalist that is significantly influential, right? It comes threefold. A, you not being tied to a certain company likely means that you actually fund yourself insofar as actually gaining the information, the tracks, and releasing the information to the public. Second, it means you as a journalist have a career you built from the ground up, especially with not having any backings prior to that. And it means your credibility is strictly tied to you having a massive undertaking of the exact principle that you have with you being a journalist. This means that thirdly, you being a political journalist means you being in the field for a majority of your life. So meaning you're actually fully aware of all the risks that you undertook as a journalist. This looks like a personalized information of having the risk as an individual, or secondly, this means that you also informing your family, for example, of the value of your occupation rather than your safety and your welfare as well. Second, what is the exact reason why you became a journalist in the first place? A, it looks like you actually wanting to fight for truth, even if it means and comes at your own expense and life, right? This is reflected in how you exactly built your career as a journalist from the ground up. Secondly, it means you also want to be able to raise the messaging of those vulnerable groups, especially in the country that you live in and the rest of the world, right? Thirdly, we recognize what is the exact manner of revealing the information to the rest of the public. I'd like to clarify two things. First, there's a fiat to assume on our side the majority of the people will believe in the information you release. But secondly, there's a fiat to assume that this manner that this will be done under will be before the elections or done properly, right? So first, the manner of revealing comes into specifying the details of how they exactly receive the information insofar as transparency is concerned. Secondly, in terms of the politician itself and the organization that you belong into, right? This means that it can take months before the election during the time course in which you reveal this information. Fourth, let's look at the background of or the context of the Illuminati. It comes twofold. One, it means they actually believe in a higher order where the elite get to actually control the people, and you're actually branded on as elite is what they want to be filled with the society that they live in, right? Where A, it likely comes from these people who live with old money or be royal blood as well. But secondly, this means that these Illuminati are inherently corrupt and want to kill people for their own means, for example, of ruling the government, right? Which goes against your direct principles of you as an
POL.
individual. This means that the implications of you as an individual journalist means on an individual level, the actions that you're undertaking is majorly tied to your career sustainability and growth in which the guilt that you believe in. This is important because on my first argument, what is the exact justification for exposing the politician? It comes threefold. One, by context of the politician, it comes in three implications. A, the reason why the candidate is gaining traction is because it's what the country actually majorly needs, or this means the demand is high on our side. This matters to you more because one, it's tied directly to your credibility as a journalist, and secondly, your country as well that you believe in and live under, right? Secondly, it's likely that the politician garnered how the politician garnered their reputation and tracks also gain a question of the method in which they did that, right? A, you have a sense of complicitness to this directly as a journalist because it stakes or the stories that you actually reveal likely garnered accountability for other politicians as well. Or it's the reason why civil unions, for example, or social movements are forwarded in your space of time, right? Thirdly, you as a journalist would likely want to protect the country that you live in, right? Because it's where your career is directly tied into by geography as well and by principle. You want to do good as a journalist and you want to maximize this, especially since it's you funding yourself and you alone as a journalist, right? Why does this matter in actually exposing these types of this politician, and why does it make it preferable? It comes threefold. One, because obviously you care about the country that you live in, right? This means you also care about the mechanisms it's performing under and the policies that it's likely going to be passed, right? Because it's likely that A, it's the Illuminati who gets the exact funds that these politicians, this exact progressive
POL.
politician wants or actually is getting. But secondly, this means that they're actually taking advantage of the politician's name as an organization more so than the politician itself, right? So it's likely that thirdly, all the policies that the politician previously passed are likely used for these silent killers that we want. For example, then, creating policies under the guise of environmental change and climate change as well, when in turn they're actually funding these types of corporations that fuel them because that's how they gain the traction that they want secretly as well, right? This is harmful because thirdly, the people that you fight for are directly tied into your expose and your career as an individual journalist, right? These people that are directly going to experience this are directly tied to you. This is what they're going to experience for the rest of their lives for a long term, right? So this means that these smoke screen effect policies that are indirectly passed by this type of politician would likely directly contribute to the rise of poverty in your country. For example, this is important because one, it assumes an ambiguous moral alignment of the exact politician, whether that politician is progressive or not, and this means they're strictly tied to the Illuminati with whatever benefits that they get. It's important because it posits three additional impacts. One, if you do expose this politician, you're likely to get better recognition and mobilization for the welfare of the people on your country, right? Because if the Illuminati does want to do damage control in the instant that they do want to retaliate to you, they'd likely negotiate well with you as a journalist as well. So at the very least, the people who are under this certain country will likely actually get the benefits that they want, such as civil unions or social welfare programs that will go directly to education or health sectors, for example. Secondly, in terms of pragmatic impacts as well, one, even if it's only 40% of the people who will believe in you, it means it's important because at least it prepares these people to research or dig further into this type of organization that likely controls the government, right? It comes twofold. One, insofar as states are concerned, it's likely that they want to achieve and create transparency within their own ranks, which means it counts as a checks and balance towards these politicians that we have in current status quo. But B, it means that social movements and universities like UP, for example, would likely dig into this and actually gain information to make it safer. It's important because it leads to pragmatic benefits like better surveillance for the people, for example, or better mechanisms within the government like laws or policies that ensure security on our end. Compared to the individual level, one, at least the guilt is better on our side and there is a lesser heavy burden that you carry as an individual, but at the same time, you also get the pragmatic benefits that we want in a current status quo. What is the worst case on side government? Even if absent all the principles that you have as an entire journalist, one, everything is still tangent to define your career, right? We recognize that exposing a major politician is directly tangent to your growth as a journalist, right? So even with all the malevolent intentions that you have as a journalist, it's still contingent to you growing as a journalist with you withholding this type of information, right? The harm of regret is at least not present on our side, right? But even if opposition might say that what if there's an exact concern of retaliation, for example, will prove to you as a preemption that one, it's unlikely to do that, or the Illuminati is unlikely to do that, because it means it's them giving you more leverage or credibility to them exposing them, right? Take note that there is an anonymity of who gets the information from you, right? If people actually hate you, or even if you do destroy world order, at least on our side, me as a journalist, I'm satisfied with myself, with the work I've done, and at the same time, I've exposed all the major blunders that the country I lived in has. For all those reasons, I'm proud to propose.
Great. Thank you so much, Prime Minister, calling leader of opposition. Here.
Hi, I'm Mia. POI's fourth or fifth. Yeah, just want to thank my teammates. This random team up, but we're still here. Okay. POI's just through voice. I'll take it for sure. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. The fact that this journalist is described like this in the info slide likely means that they are in a country with politically volatile conditions. They have a great degree of poverty. They have a large wealth gap. The exact reason why this journalist is so popular for their work is because of the dire conditions their journalism exists in. So the question of this debate boils down to, does this Illuminati story of yours change this journalist society for the better? We at opposition posit that it does not. There's only one thing that we want to banner here. Why is withholding the story aligned with the journalist's most proximate interests? We think that they have two things that they want. Number one is safety. The actor wants a good extent of safety to practice their work that they love and are passionate about. This is the prerequisite to tell more stories. You have to feel comfortable enough to go outside, investigate, to report in the news. And the second is, we agree with PM that they have an advocacy. They want to help those who suffer. They want to help people people make good political decisions. They want to call attention to the most important causes. But second, point of framing. Why are they in this line of work in the first place? Being a journalist is a dangerous line of work. You're always caught in the crossfire of political battles. Many journalists in the current state of status in status quo suffer from crackdowns, especially in this state we're talking about because of the conditions they exist in. This means that this person truly believes in the social impacts of their voice and of telling stories that create a difference. But how did they rise to fame in the first place? We agree that this journalist rose to fame because they reported brave and unpopular stories. But we argue that this journalist rose to fame exactly because they were strategic in selecting what they ought to report. We think that this journalist would not be where they are right now if they reported every single piece of intel sent to them a box on their porch every single month. They wouldn't report all of that. They were strategic in selecting it, which is why their stories were very important and valued to the extent that it was. Now I'm going to analyze on the first interest of safety. Look, the Illuminati is not your enemy. Do not make them one. The Illuminati have infinite, discrete, and very elaborate set of resources. They can harm you in many ways you cannot defend yourself from. This is not just risk. You literally put a target on your back. You're just waiting for the day you step outside and they shoot you. Oppo say the Illuminati will kill you if their existence has been made known to the public and they know that you were the one who exposed them, so they're gonna be hesitant to kill you. Two things. Number one, they don't care if people think it's them at that point. And second, if you don't believe that, the Illuminati can easily blame your many enemies for your death. You're literally a popular progressive journalist. It's likely you have many enemies that want to kill you. The Illuminati are powerful to blame your death on other people. And lastly, on the principle, if you die, you cannot report anything at all. Your principles, all the things PM talked about, and meaning only matter because you are alive and you're comfortable and you can work to fulfill them. All of these things are the prerequisite to any literal pragmatic benefit in this round. Second, then, how does your silence help people on the ground? What will happen when you report? The people who believe you, what will happen is they vote for other politicians who are secondary to this progressive politician because they believe Illuminati bad. They are likely to be bad for two reasons, other politicians. Firstly, the reason why they're not as popular is because they're probably already doing bad right now or in the past and they're not bringing anything new to the table. It's like the principle of contrast. You're doing something good, you're the only good thing, that's why they like you. Second, in countries such as this one, traditional politicians have the most perverse incentives to keep voters in vulnerable conditions. So this progressive politician is a very rare occurrence. And second, speaking up has a price tag we are not willing to pay. People will likely vote for other non-Illuminati politicians who are likely to be relatively bad or worse to the Illuminati politician. And this will create short-term harms, like their use of propaganda finding ways to keep people poor so they can stay in power. They have long-term harms, bad policies for the poor, absolutely erasing all of the efforts of that one Illuminati politician. This journalist will know it's exactly because they chose to break their silence that the people on the ground have fell into the same cycle of bad governance. That's a worse degree of guilt compared to what PM talks to you about. It's not just guilt, you have seen that your actions have caused material suffering on the ground for the people who your words and your reports want to help in the first place. Before I wait, I'll take the POI.
What's your guarantee that the major politicians prior to the one right now are also not people that were also under the Illuminati and was what caused the massive disrepair that country is in right now?
Even if that's the case, then we'd rather just take the politician who is also an Illuminati but is progressive because, as I explained, they're a relatively better choice. We're not saying there are absolutes. There are no absolutes bad or there are no absolute bads or absolute goods. What we're saying is that relatively, we have to take the chance to elect these progressive politicians to make the material conditions for the people better. Your morality and your principles and exposing the Illuminati, which will not change anything, will not feed them. Now we want to weigh 3 important points. Firstly, why will the politician do good even if they're associated with the Illuminati? First layer of reasoning, intuition pump. This individual is already doing good, even right now, where they are associated with the Illuminati. Second reason, this politician wants to do good to stay in power and remain under the protection of the Illuminati. Thirdly, this politician is young, they have fervor, and most often these types of politicians bring new perspectives. There are people who are anti-corrupt, there are people who are with the masses, for example. All of these reasons prove that this politician, even if they're associated with the Illuminati, will likely do good in the first place. And very last piece of framing, why is it that the Illuminati has no interest to make him be a bad politician in the future, because Gov will definitely say that. Firstly, Gov is arguing with the preconceived notion of who the Illuminati is. Within the bounds of this debate, it's just that they want to rule in secrecy. Like, what are all these things they're talking about? We're not literally basing all of these things in movies. We just have to prove what are the things that are within the bounds of the debate, within the bounds of the info slide. Second, intuition pump, why would the Illuminati invest resources into putting this progressive politician in power if they're so bad and they're just a bunch of oligarchs laughing behind the curtain? They're not the monolithic actor that you see online, for example, or see on Twitter, see in conspiracy theories. They're literally a different actor in this debate. You have to suspend your preconceived notions. And lastly, he is popular for a good reason. We think that all of these we think that Lilek could just want to maintain his power and influence and not necessarily care about his policies. They don't care about him being corrupt. He doesn't have to give them money or any type of malevolent incentive. They just want him to be in power, and that power comes from the fact that he's progressive and a good politician and popular with the people. Very lastly, look, even in the best case of Gov, the Illuminati will always try to seek power one way or another. On Gov, in the best case, you expose the politician. They are not voted for by the people. The Illuminati still has infinite resources of power, and they will do anything just to make sure that they're in power, even if those things are not democratic. Your sacrifice would essentially mean nothing in the grander scheme of things. We're not saying that the Illuminati is good, but we're not saying that they're absolutely malevolent actors as well. They kill you off, and we move on. For example, all of these things don't do anything. Lastly, isolated response. PM says you want recognition. This journalist does not care about recognition anymore. This is superficial benefit the actor gets in exchange for their safety and in exchange for their life. At the end of the speech, what I'm able to do, firstly, prove the most proximate interests of safety, which is the prerequisite to the second one of being able to fulfill your principles. And lastly, I'm able to provide multiple points of weighing. Why is it that this is a more beneficial action, not just for you, but for the people you want to help through your work? For all these reasons and more, proud to oppose.
Great. Thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you so much, Leader of Opposition, to extend the case of sad government calling Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Hi, just a minute to go to the bathroom. Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Hi, is this visible and audible?
Yep, you're visible and audible.
Great. POIs to chat? Yes. Also, shout outs to Henson, Devlin, Ryan. It was nice meeting you in another XDC. The SAM's almost over. Grateful for your support as an organization. To my teammates, Kiarra and Hannah, there was an interesting tournament despite prepping LDR or whatever, because we're not physically in the same place. So yes. Lastly, shout out to Robert. Yeah, hi Robert. Congrats on breaking. Also Lorraine, Hongland to Ken, Welban, Aiden, all the people, whatever. Okay, so starting again, TIC chat, trigger warning, mentions of death, killing, corruption, all that stuff. I'm going to be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. I want to clarify, UP can't win because they assume the Illuminati is not that big of a threat. Two things remain unresponded to from Hannah. A, if the Illuminati wants to get that much of power, obviously their intentions are a lot more malevolent. We've characterized that. One, they likely want to create an elite group of people to rule the world, and that means also killing other individuals, people that they see as useless entities that are just simply consuming and wasting the resources of the earth. A malevolent characterization. But secondly, even if they aren't doing it right now, delaying that intervention makes them likely to achieve that goal in the future. And I think that's problematic. They do not give solvency how they're going to be preventing that long-term harm. All of their benefits are short-term. Two responses. Firstly, the Illuminati causes more damage if you let them be a secret organization, especially if you won't try to plan your expose. I'm going to be making that specifically later. Three implications that obviously it's true, this likely happens. A, on timeline, it only prepares the Illuminati to expand further and carry out more harmful plans. Because even if their current capacity right now is just secretly killing 100 or 200 people because they want to bury evidence of corruption within a small local town, if you further delay that in the future, if you allow the election of that candidate, it gives them or provides them access to a lot more opportunities and connections to be able to carry out more heinous forms of crimes in the future, literally killing thousands of people, or if not, calling like packaging something as a form of like defeating terrorism when in reality you're scapegoating genocide. The point is, two tangible harms happen if the Illuminati isn't directly causing it. One, they have propaganda to further convince people that what they're doing is good when in reality it's just like glorified genocide or glorified forms of killing people. But secondly, as well, the second contradiction, B, there's a contradiction on their end because they agree that the Illuminati is a powerful organization, but they simply assume that like they aren't capable enough of like secretly killing all the people in the world, and that how they have the most benevolent incentive. They simply haven't proven that. But even if the Illuminati isn't the direct cause, you've already proven that. See, they breed way to more harmful things, such as aside from spreading propaganda, if they secretly kill a politician within a country that was a key figure towards maintaining centrism and balance among the rights and the left, then they probably want to elect some right-wing individual or a corrupt politician that might go rogue and go against their very plans and cause more damage in return. Like turning into a dictatorship. This motion, sure, isn't necessarily a movie, but I think it's better than a movie. It's entirely a world of endless possibilities. The second response then is we argue it's actually easier to take down the Illuminati now if the world finds out. Two reasons. A, international military bodies, NATO, BRICS, China, and the US, for example, work together because A, they have the incentive to do so because if the Illuminati is disrupting their economic supply chains, then they want to intervene as soon as possible. Or B, if the Illuminati is secretly funding terrorist groups, for example, they even have a greater incentive to stop the Illuminati as much as possible. But B, as well, you simply warn the public. But C, I want to point out, I'm going to be proving why you also get far better safety and protection if the world finds out right now. Or even if you do get killed in the future, at least you're able to do the second impact and issue, maximize the amount of net good you cause to the world. Net good, not in the sense that you cause like suffering, but I think that suffering is a necessary birthing pain for you to reform the system to prevent even bigger harms that the Illuminati can cause and can like create in the future if you give them more resources if that politician is elected. The first extension, this is very important. The Illuminati still finds out the information was sent to you even if you don't reveal that information. This is likely because A, from Ops' own characterization, Illuminati have hidden networks, CCTVs to find out who funneled that envelope under your door. But B, because of the fact that you're only one individual, it's easier to take you out as opposed to the world finding out, your LGU finding out. They send you armored vehicles, bulletproof vests, and 24-hour security, which makes it harder for the Illuminati to gun you down. And even if you are going to be gunned down in the future, at least the world has already been warned, even on our mechanisms on how you further make sure you don't make the Illuminati expand further because the intervention is urgent. Three reasons this is likely. Obviously, one, it's easier to target one individual and send an assassin to gun you down. But two, you can't warn other entities such as social movements, the electorate, and the military to prepare for if the Illuminati does decide to retaliate, but B, prevent these harms from becoming even greater in the future because of their increased capacity. But thirdly, as well, simply because of the fact that you are like not involving other people in the future as well, then obviously you aren't able to spread your other knowledge, not just in terms of harming the Illuminati, but other hidden dirty tactics like other politicians or other leaders in our society actually have. The comparative on our end expose is far better for A, your proximate interest, but B, society in general. Three reasons why. One, obviously safety. You have more if more people know about the information that it was sent to you and you reveal it to the public, then governments likely send armored vehicles, 24-hour surveillance. And if the Illuminati does decide to retaliate, then it only confirms the suspicion that they're a very bad organization and the other international bodies like military and governments work together to crack down on them as soon as possible. But the second reason, mechanisms to successfully expose the info without the Illuminati finding out. POI, sure.
So, if your characterization of the Illuminati, which is unanimously bad, is correct, why do you think that they align with a progressive candidate instead of doing what you suggested of working with the right-wing candidate to begin with?
That's very weird because I was taught at a young age that people lie. They've deceived that young progressive candidate that, oh, we're super duper good pacifists, when in reality it's just a part of our hidden agenda. Mechanisms to successfully expose the Illuminati. 1, writing plans on paper so there's no digital footprint. But 2, working by yourself. 3, telling people you need resources for another project. Like, oh, Mayor, I need media coverage because I want to cover environmental aspects here, or I need to coordinate with Rappler. But you use those resources for something else, which is your expose project, right? Which means 3, then you're able to warn the public far better. Comparatively, on your end, the harms compound and are therefore becomes even greater because you do not even mech at all. What is your incentive? What is your policy to prevent the Illuminati from further killing a lot more people? On our worst case, even if this does cause chaos in the world because the Illuminati, with their current capacity, is probably going to be so riling up certain towns and bombing certain things, right? I think, 1, this is a necessary birthing pain, at least by weighing the current capacity of the Illuminati right now is weaker because they haven't been linked to the resources that the politician has provided to them. But B, it's necessary for society to assess if there are things wrong within their healthcare system or other systems. Like, what if there's corruption happening within chemicals designed to weaken the people in the current PhilHealth of the Philippines, for example? On up, they lose, they do not mech, their benefits are short term.
Great. Thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister, calling Deputy Leader Bob. Here.
Hello. I'll try to open my camera. Ayan. Hi. So I just want to check if I'm audible and visible as well.
Yep, you're audible and visible.
Okay. My name is Justine. DLO, POS, voice at the 4th or 5th minute. Yeah. Thanks, Mia and Kuya Sean. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Journalism is one of the hardest line of work in the world. It is lethal and requires a person to forgo a lot of their material interests and aspirations in the pursuit of truth and justice. But to be a famous independent political journalist is a different nuance in and of itself. One doesn't just become a famous independent political journalist just because they chose to tell every single story out there. Patricia Evangelista, for example, the author of the memoir Some People Need Killing, had to delay the publishing of her book that exposes the ills of Duterte's war on drugs a year after his term in 2023. Presumably, Evangelista was being consumed by guilt during the creation of this book, when she was interviewing the mothers who lost their sons to the drug war, when she was seeing corpses upon corpses in the slums of Metro Manila and beyond. But we think that guilt is not enough. The misconception government makes is that every unconventional and uncomfortable story must be told. But you must remember that these stories have a price to pay, a price that we cannot afford, a price that we will never be able to pay back. We think that sometimes silence is the bravest thing that a journalist can do to protect the people they swore to protect the moment that they chose this very dangerous path. We think that the role of journalists, therefore, especially in the political climate that we frame, is not to be reckless and just expose whatever that comes their way. Their role is to assess and discern whether or not this information is something that matters to people right now, and if this is something that people actually want. The problem with this government team is that they don't debate the nuance of this journalist as an independent political journalist. They just gave you a canned case that all journalists care about is their legitimacy and staying true to their principles. I think that this journalist is a complex actor, not just a monolith that can critically assess the implications of their actions. So legitimacy isn't just about always telling the truth, isn't just about exposing every story, it's about choosing to tell stories that have an impact, stories that change people's lives. My question to the government side is simple. What change happens when this information is revealed? I think they tell us nothing and just ranted about why they should do this and not the implications of doing this, right? But before I proceed, I want to do some responses and preemptive weighing first. The first thing they asked is the Illuminati good? Let's discuss, right? Who really is the Illuminati and what are their interests as per the Infoslide, and not based on the assertions of the government side, based on the fear-mongering movies that they probably watch, for example. I think that they're being uncharitable by just asserting that the Illuminati is unanimously bad. My question is, if the Illuminati is extremely bad and violent as they say, why the hell are they aligning themselves with this young progressive politician in the info slide? They forgot an important piece of the info slide, right? The Illuminati is actively working with this politician with progressive values because they probably believe in this politician more than other alternative candidates. If they are so bad as DPM claims, then they should have just aligned themselves with a conservative politician, but they did not. They said, oh, people
Yeah.
lie, they scheme, right? Later, the Illuminati is probably scheming. But why, right? This is just an assertion. Why would they do this? I think that they sound like conspiracy theorists asserting this. Why would the Illuminati waste time and resources to scheme and lie when they could just coalesce with conservative politicians instead? It simply does not make sense. The problem with the government side is that they assume that someone wanting power means that the person is automatically a bad person, but even the most progressive politicians also want power. So power is not an absolutely bad thing. It's about who is actually in power. We prove that this politician who is progressive is better than other alternatives in this world of this particular journalist. But before I proceed, yeah, POI.
If the Illuminati is not super big but are still bad, isn't it easier for the military to take them down right now? Because on your end, you still can't reveal the information even if you want to delay it.
So let's try to deconstruct what the info slide says about the Illuminati, right? Sure, they want to eventually control the government, but let's look at the probable reason why. And this is where I engage with the POI, right? Why do extremist groups like the Illuminati rise in the first place? They rise as a reaction to the extreme conditions on the ground. They were probably radicalized by the political conditions that happened to them. What this implies within the debate is that this politician is the better alternative in the political scene of the country, and because it is this politician that the people need right now, it is your responsibility, therefore, as a journalist who cares about making a difference, to make sure that the better alternative triumphs then. The second thing they ask is that, what is the guarantee that the previous politician is not a member of the Illuminati as well? Or what is the guarantee that this politician would actually be true to the principles that they're trying to fight for? First of all, just listen to how this POI also sounded like a conspiracy theory. Like, it does not make sense if all politicians before this young progressive politician is also a member of the Illuminati. Like, what is the point of exposing this information then? Like, you have to agree that, you're only going to expose the information at this point in time, and you cannot just say that, oh, other politicians before this politician is also a member of the Illuminati. What happens then if this politician becomes bad in the future? And this is where we engage in the worst case. So let's assume that you do not reveal the information right now. This progressive politician gets elected and they're still affiliated with the Illuminati. What happens if they make mistakes? What happens, for example, if they're not true to what they said in the campaign and they actually make bad policies? The first is that you can still expose this politician in ways that does not link them to the Illuminati. You have done this before and you can still do it in the instance that it happens. We think that precisely because you have the capacity to credibly expose the candidate, that you can also make a difference when the worst case happens, that this politician fucks up. But you have to actually make sure that this happens, right? And not just kill the politician's chances of winning just because of, a paranoia that they're probably going to fuck up in the future, or in the paranoia that the Illuminati is always bad, right? I think that this government team is very weird. Like, why do we have to prove that this group has not killed anyone when the info slide doesn't even mention that, right? What they need to do is prove that they have done something so bad to warrant the expose. I think that they were unable to do that. They're just relying on the assumptions of what the Illuminati looks like in the first place. But moreover, I think that we can strategically correct the wrong things that will happen in the future if they do happen. But the harms that will happen under the comparative of government side will be irreversible for all the reasons that Mia explains in the likely comparative, which government never tries to defend. So, if a conservative politician wins, we think that it's far worse for the political conditions of this country. If a traditional politician wins, we think that it's likely to hurt more people on the ground. We think that this is the price that we cannot necessarily pay. Is this information likely to change the world for the better? We think that the answer is no, and government doesn't even try to answer this at all. It is government's burden to explain why the alternatives that would arise are better for the conditions of the people. Even if you don't die, and even if you fulfill your principles as a journalist, I think that this person won't be able to sleep at night knowing that her persistent and unbashful pursuit for telling every single story cost the lives or the suffering of people on the ground. We think that is the price that we cannot necessarily pay. We think that that is the burden that, you cannot necessarily take on their side of the house. For all these reasons, we're very, very proud to oppose.
Great. Thank you so much. Deputy Leader of Opposition calling government whip. Here, here.
Hey, sorry, I'm here. We were just switching seats. Just give me a moment to set up. Am I visible and audible?
Yep, you're visible and audible.
Thank you so much. I'll just be setting up my recorder. This is already being recorded anyway, so I hope you guys are okay with your POIs being recorded if I do decide to take one. It depends. I have a lot to say because I love conspiracies. All right. I guess my teammates did shout out, so I will too. Shout out to Steven, who's here, and nanglood ka kanina, kaya wala gihatag og shout out. To everyone else that are here that also watching with their friends, Ryan, and other people. I'm sorry, I'm just not watching right now. And one last shout out to that one person I would still love if they were a worm. I hope to make a garden with you someday, if that's possible. Okay, just give me a moment to arrange everything. Starting my speech. Hold on, I'm sorry. All right, starting my speech in 3, 2. Oh wait. Okay, this is incredibly important. I'm sorry. Can you open the Infoslide? All right. Okay. All right, starting my speech for real this time in 3, 2, 1. Because opposition loves to dramatize the info slide so much, I'm going to read the exact part that actually talks about the Illuminati, right? That they are planning to rule most state governments within the shadows, and the organization has been tied to the assassination of a few key political players in your country. I think to that extent, they just created a lot of bullshit to try and make their case work. But on that instance, then that we assume everything that they said is true, then I will give you three major clarifications to just prove why everything that they said doesn't actually hold water in this debate. Firstly, a major organization with all intents of being benevolent and bringing the light of God to earth wouldn't shroud themselves in secrecy. I don't understand why this is a primary motive that they try to speculate is something that's actually true. Like, these people are actually good people, guys. We have to believe that they actually want the good for the people. Then why the fuck are you hiding yourselves, guys? I mean, hello. But secondly, that's already absent of consideration of the larger retrospective timeline. If their intentions have been benevolent from the beginning, why all the genocides? Why the assassinations? And most importantly, why start now with this progressive politician if this is a major organization that had probably existed for years, if not centuries, right? And I think that just proves two things. That one, this is also a massive strategy on their part if we analyze this by timeline in the present, that nuances back to the goal in the info slide that they want massive, major control of the superiority of the world, which means that this is the strongest certainty we have in the debate that they cannot squirrel around. But secondly, you know this as a journalist because you are a complex individual. They say it's going to eat you up alive to expose this information. I don't understand how it doesn't eat you up alive to know how the world works and not continue to be able to push forward. But I'm going to talk about that more later. Third clarification, sure, even if they're not totally evil, right, we can at least assume that they are morally ambiguous, leaning away from structural systems and world order. They still don't believe in laws. They don't believe in democracy if they're literally trying to control politicians. They don't, so all of that. So it's the knowledge of that capacity for them to be able to do things that's exactly going to eat you up at night. Opposition is working on blind faith that these organizations can only do good. Bad faith on our end is not true because we're only simply saying it by what the info site actually tells you. So if that's what the criteria they want to hinge this debate on, I think we already win. I'll talk about my issue right now. Firstly, then, is this information actually worth exposing? And there's two distinct things that we have to talk about. You're exposing not just the politician, which is just the majority of the locality of what their case was actually talking about. I don't understand why. But secondly, you're also exposing a major organization that is tried to impose control on major world powers. So I think that has some sort of credibility. It's actually a much larger scope you at least got from government. But first push on opposition is to say, are these actors you want to expose really inherently evil? And while my clarifications were already working towards that, let's talk into the nitty-gritty of the things they actually talked about, right? Because incredibly generous. Firstly, coming from Hannah, we already gave you 3 important characterizations of the journalist. That one, you built this career by yourself, you're an independent, credible journalist, and that's probably not an easy thing to do, right? Second, you're not tied to anyone, which means that all the information that you expose are heavily tied to you, which means that your principles tie heavily into it because it's a representation of you. Your actions are a representation of you. But thirdly, you already went and undertook those same risks in the past. It's probably that you weren't able to build yourself from the ground out without prior like a support from a company or probably from a financial backer. If you weren't willing to put yourself at risk, right? And this is incredibly important to point out because the impact of guilt on our end was something that was heavily unresponded to. Why does this matter? Because it's not just in the interim, right? It's also towards timeline on future. It affects how you do your job moving forward. Prior to all of this, you were able to do those things with the absence of the knowledge that none of these things were being done in secrecy. You simply exposed this one politician simply because you believed they were at fault. You didn't know that there was something else going on, like maybe they were being a puppet, right? Or even traditional conservative politicians in the past probably were also puppets of this particular organization. For you to know that now, it's exactly what's going to eat you up alive, knowing that you are now, they are connected to these things, which are 2 primary impacts. That one, it's so much harder for you to do your job in the future because now you know that there's a larger connection to tie to this specific organization, the Illuminati, which means that they're telling us that they have to be more strategic with the information they point out. And you can't be strategic because how can you be strategic when you omitted this information now so you can no longer present this information in the future? And this is a hill they chose to die on, so they cannot come back from that. But thirdly, then, even if we push zero moral alignments in this debate, absent of the possibility that these corporations are actually evil and these people are evil, this politician is evil, or maybe they're all good people. I don't know. That's probably what they want, right? It's that massive omission of truths of how the world secretly works is what will eat you up alive. You cover a politician being exposed for being a pedophile. You cover a genocide knowing who is responsible. You cover somebody, or at least even this progressive politician in the future, making blunders and mistakes. And you have to omit that because if the full extent of the benefit that they want is that this politician is able to move forward, then they have to omit the information that is tied to that organization for underhanded tactics that they might use. So I think to that extent, they did not think this case through at all. I'm sorry that this is the case we had to deal with in grants. Second push then, and this is the more generous weighing in terms of what the actual case they actually gave us was. But prior to that, any POIs? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nothing. Thank you. Anyway, second major push, that the politician and the sub-interest to a localized level. So the majority of their case was actually tied to, how you want to help the people on the ground. These are the things that we worked your whole life for. You try to expose all these politicians so that these people will get better accountability, better resources. And these people, they did make these concessions, right? We did, coming from Hannah, we already characterized to you what exactly is the political or like environmental atmosphere of what your country is going through right now. It's likely that people are going through a hard time, which is why this politician specifically is getting massive traction. But what does that prove, right? One, we already told you that this exact, coming from my clarifications and coming even from Hannah and Sean, that is exactly a strategic move on the Illuminati's part. This is not an act of goodwill. This is an act of something that they feel is going to be much more beneficial for them on timeline. It's likely that them supporting conservative politicians in the past did not work. It's likely that they tried to support other initiatives that are likely the very reasons why this fell into disrepair. So even in that instance, then the weighing here is simple. Being generous, even if they are doing good and they plan to do good, right? And this is absolute best case on opposition. We're still so much better. Why? A, you could push them to do better on government. Because if what they say is true, and that maybe they're inside their little angels and saints that actually want to help the good of people, right? It means that they're willing to negotiate with whoever is irresponsible in order to make sure this politician gets more traction and capacity. Probably even if it's not a form of damage control, that's a much more bigger likelihood, right? But secondly, this is the mechanism that we push to you coming from Hannah and Sean, that these negotiations is what's going to pave way for that eventual satisfaction that comes back to you as a journalist who provided this information, which means that not only will you be able to boost your career, assuming that you're actually somebody selfish and just wants to like get bigger than the political career that you have right now, but secondly, even if they kill you, right, that information will still already be public to begin with. The world leaders don't need you alive to fix repair or even integrate this new truth. Assuming that they are good, you probably want to make sure that this will bring better involvement to the world. It's not just all about principle. It's about how you as a journalist is able to forward better contribution to what you feel is right. In that instance, if the journalist on their end is better in omitting silence to how the world works, then what's the point of journalists, right? We should all just die and, eventually succumb to the Illuminati ourselves, praying that they become a celebrity. Bye.
Great. Thank you so much, Government Whip, calling up Whip. Here.
Hello, am I audible?
Yep, you're loud and clear.
Okay,
And visible as well.
here you go. For POIs indicated in the chat. Um, wait, I'll just drink. Again, for POIs indicated in the chat, I'll start my timer and then begin. Start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Government bench is fighting imagined evils. They saw the word Illuminati and started shaking and taking up arms. All the harms of government bench are fruits of their imaginations, and when DLO said, or GovWhip rather said, they love conspiracy theories, we say, we can tell. The rise of fame and power of this specific journalist is not a happy trek. It is gnarly. It is a strategic journey with crucial concessions made along the way. This journalist is not in their position because they always speak up, that when they did not say the truth, like what the whip said on their side of the house, they started shaking and cannot do their job. What is likely the case is that because of the conditions that both teams agreed, that it is a really, really bad country, they likely took up already important concessions for them to be able to get the traction and power that they already have. The very important thing to note in this debate is just because you are loud does not mean you are right, and it is exactly the silence that we want this journalist to take in the very first place. There are a few things that I'd like to resolve in my whip speech. The first thing that I'd like to resolve are the debate on characterizations. The first thing I want to flag is the side of government bench is using their preconceived idea of Illuminati as a frame and assume that they are evil just because they're trying to pursue power. That's something that I'm going to deconstruct in my speech. And second, they assume that they're evil just because they've, quote unquote, via reading the Infoslide, killed off key political figures in the country. The first thing I'd like to point out is that BBM is a key political figure. Duterte is a key political figure. Authoritarians are key political figures. Just because you assassinate a key political figure does not automatically make you a bad person to begin with or a bad actor to begin with. That's an assertion they used to be the foundation of the entirety of their case, which is crazy. The second is that they said, oh, because you're working under secrecy, you must be evil. Like, there's no connection about working in secrecy and being evil when a lot of the times a lot of good deeds are done behind curtains, exactly because they do not want the interference of other actors to begin with, exactly because if we both agree that the context is problematic and we have really bad leaders to begin with, they're likely to interfere with the ways that you're doing good. But even then, we were actually charitable. We said probably they're doing bad things, or yes, they're doing bad things, but even then all the other good things or heavily outweigh them in the very first place. But more importantly, we also explained why the harm of actually saying this and the harm as to the way you're able to tell stories and stories that matter are more crucial harm for this specific actor and more crucial harm for the people that this specific actor want to protect in the very first place. Because it adds another enemy for this specific actor. It adds another kind of worry for this specific actor, and therefore, in those specific instances, it makes telling stories that matter even more difficult for this actor to begin with. And this is very crucial because this takes away a lot of the foundations of their case, which is that Illuminati bad, Illuminati bomb, Illuminati kill, Illuminati is under the skirt of Lady Gaga. All of those things, therefore, cannot be the foundation or the reasons as to why the judges has to vote government bench in this side of the house. More importantly, is pursuit of power inherently bad? There are two important things that I'd like to point out here. The first is that to be able to change the world, you have to have an access to a significant extent of power. So what this means, therefore, is that it is not the pursuit of power that is bad, it is upon which that power is being used. And what we suggest on our side of the house is that if this specific organization is aligning with good actors, with a progressive candidate, when they already know that there's a right-wing candidate that's probably popular in this specific context as well, which already means that there's a signifier that maybe this kind of actor isn't as unanimously bad as what government bench suggests in the very first place. But the second is that in instances, and this is where we were charitable, in instances where this person is bad, what we explained from Justin is exactly because you're able to make yourself as safe as possible and as secure as of the moment as possible, that you're able to strategically call out specific bad policies by this specific a government official in the future. So probably this official starts creating conservative policies, creating right-wing policies in the very first place. You're able to point out these specific instances in the future and therefore able to get traction to be able to correct them in the very first place. So on that note, that also deconstructs all the foundations of the case. The next part of here is on net good to the world, because their claim is that this kind of truth will change the world for the better. I don't know the link. Like suddenly people will make good choices just because they know this is connected to the Illuminati. But even then, they also said that maybe the other candidates are connected to the Illuminati. So there's no choice to begin with in the first place. So I'm not really sure how they're really able to solve this. But the more important thing here is that the biggest net good in the world is making sure that we get as much progressive policies for this specific country as possible to be able to get as much welfare, to quote unquote, as what the info slide says, get as much equality or wealth equality in the very first place, and to be able to get social programs for the needy. All of those are tangible, immediate good for the people that they will be able to experience in the onset, and not the imagined harms that may or may not be happening on the side of government bench. Before I proceed, I'll take POI.
So you still assume the Illuminati is good? Isn't it better to prepare secretly through mechanisms of paper trails with no digital footprint to be prepared if they do end up being bad?
Never assume, proven. Proceeding. So let's talk about the guilt. Their claim is that this journalist will feel so guilty because they're withholding the truth in the very first place. So there are two important things here. The first is that government bench has never proven that this journalist has spoken the truth in every single instance of their lives. In fact, that's impossible. It is impossible for this journalist to tell every single story that they've heard. So it is unclear as to why suddenly, after hearing this, they will be shaking in their boots and wouldn't be able to do their jobs. But the second is that what we suggest is that it is exactly these types of people that have been in the middle of crossfire of political battles that are best able to handle guilt in the very first place. So even if we concede to some extent of guilt, what we argue is that this specific actor, especially because this is an actor debate, has the best capacity to be able to withhold the blows of that guilt in the very first place. On the contrary, the manifestations of guilt that we explained on their side are more visceral. The manifestations of direct policies with the conservative candidates are voted into power are so much more visceral and much more approximate to the specific actor, because this actor will see the people on the ground, the people that they love, the people that they care about, the people that they tell stories for, experiencing the very bad policies of the alternative candidates that people would have voted for. And with all those reasons, I think it's pretty clear oppose.
Great. Great. Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Upwip. To wrap up the entirety of opposition, calling up reply. Here.
Hello again. So my name is Justin. I'm the opposition reply. All right. I hope I'm visible and audible. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. In my reply, I want to deal with you loose ends of this debate and explain why opposition wins this final. 3 things, right? Firstly, I'll talk about which version of the world will this journalist be able to enact change and do their job properly. And this is where I will reinforce the idea of being alive and being able to participate in society is the prerequisite to those things. Secondly, I'm going to explain why the actor would still be able to do their job even if they withhold this information. And finally, on the never ending push and pull between what the Illuminati is and whether or not they're bad or good. Firstly, I think at best, what government fulfills is the individual priorities and interests of this journalist. The pursuit of legitimacy, for instance, being able to absolutely be true to your principles, etc. But does this person even need legitimacy in the first place if they're already famous and credible as per the info slide? Does this person have to strictly stick to their principles, even at the expense of the people on the ground? Because at this point, I still don't know what kind of politician would win and whether this politician would be able to do good on their side of the house. And who will expose this particular politician if they don't do well, for instance? If you are dead because you exposed this information and the Illuminati killed you, for instance, you only not only did you lead this country to a future beyond repair, you also prevented yourself from participating in reshaping that nation because you are not in the world anymore and you are no longer alive. Secondly, let's engage with another thing that they said. They said that being true to your principles is important because if you are silent, you won't be able to do your job, for example. My question is, why? They did not build this, and I don't know why this would be the immediate reaction. In fact, it is quite literally the opposite. Journalists have to eat death threats every day. They have to face and listen to whistleblowers every time. But in the vast majority of instances, these journalists do not name every single whistleblower because they know the implications. They do not always spill the truth, for example. The ramifications and the probable outcomes are things that these journalists are aware of. All the time, journalists have to be silent, but they persist in their job because that is one of the contradictions that we have to accept when we choose this particular line of work in the first place. They assume that this journalist is a monolith that is incapable of any complex thought, of any critical thinking, of any internal discernment. I think that they don't engage with their push that maybe this actor cares more about the people whose suffering they witnessed firsthand. They care enough so much that they are willing to forego exposing this information in order for them to live in conditions that are far better than yesterday. The next thing they said is that, oh, the Illuminati is bad because the info slide says that they want to rule most state governments within the shadows and the organization has been tied to the assassination of a few political players. But I think that this is disingenuous to the frame that extremist groups rise as a reaction to their political climates and political scenery. If this Illuminati group, for example, assassinated a member of an oppressive political dynasty in Kamsur, I won't mention their names, right? Are they really the bad people? If they want to control the government that has long been controlled by dictators and fascists, are they really the bad people, right? They just assume that everything in the info slide points to the Illuminati being bad without critically assessing the contextual clues in the info slide that explain why they were led to do all these kinds of things in the first place. They just assert that wanting power is bad and then that's it. We explained holistically in the extension why sometimes even progressive people want power, but it's about the people who are in power that actually changes how power is perceived at the end of the day. But what if they are bad? In the very, very, very worst case, what if the Illuminati is bad? Then they will be bad on both sides, right? But if you expose them now, not only do you lose a good politician that champions progressive values, you also run the risk of losing your life. But even if the worst case is that the Illuminati is actually bad, presumably their intentions of controlling the government are better than the intentions of the politicians who are waiting for this progressive politician to fall and lose. We think that now is not the time to be extremely absolute. Now is the time to weigh the consequences of our action and to be more critical about the implications of it. For all those reasons, we're very, very proud to oppose.
Great. Uh, thank you so much. Of reply, calling of reply to close the debate. Here.
Hi, just like one moment to restart router. Hi, is this audible and visible?
Yep, you're audible and visible.
Great. Mm. Also, someone wanted me to read this out loud. Ryan Tahamid, 4:30 p.m. Shan, tell our love story at always meeting at semis in your reply speech. I'm not gonna tell it because I don't want to integrate it. I'm too lazy. So yeah, starting my speech in three, two, one, go. It's very weird to tell the people that Gov is the only one having conspiracy theories when all my childhood I've been taught the Illuminati is deceptive and bad. I think the more convincing conspiracy theory is that they're actually good and want to help people on the ground. But if they're so good, why do they want to act in secret, right? Three responses, let's destroy up, these responses are weighing as well. The first thing is, if the Illuminati is so good because the assassination of politicians involves Marcos and Duterte, inherently conservative and corrupt politicians, three responses here. A, that's like quite of a limited frame. Risa Hontiveros, Lenny Robredo are also still politicians. Like you can't just cherry pick to try to win the round. But B, they also ignore the fact that we've proven the Illuminati is deceptive about how probably A, the Illuminati strategy of supporting conservative politicians in the past wasn't working, so they're now switching to progressive, which means that B, the reasoning is better because it's independent if whether or not the progressive candidate is actually evil, because they likely are just decepting that political candidate, promising them that, oh, we aren't like the other terrorist organizations because we still have some form of good in us, right? But sadly, even if they actually are good, and this is the principled response as early as Hannah, right? I think it's just principally unfair to let the Illuminati rule most government systems because one, as the Infoslide states, they're deceptive and are omitting specific forms of information to government. So you don't allow states to fulfill their paternalistic obligation of making sure they should be the one to lead people on the ground. Like it's very weird to respect an organization that doesn't even respect democracy at the end of the day, right? But the second thing then is this is where the more tangible reality is. Like, sure, the Illuminati is not as bad. They're probably just 70% or 60% bad compared to your average terrorist group. I'd argue that's actually a good thing, right? Because A, it means that it's easier for you to take them out through our three exclusive mechanisms. One, international bodies like UN, NATO, even BRICS are now going to be working together to topple down that organization as fast as possible. But B, as well, the timeline by which you're going to be revealing this information. If you do not want other people to find out, right, you do a, paper planning, making sure that you scope out every single thing in your room if there are hidden bugs or listening devices, right? But B, as well, making sure that you procure resources to telling people, I need these things for a different project, when in reality, you're just planning on exposing the Illuminati on policy fulfillment of feasibility. I think Gov already wins, right? But with that then, I also want to point out that the biggest harm on up that they still do not resolve is the fact that one, you as the Illuminati is still capable of finding out if that information was sent to that journalist. And what this does is A, proves the Illuminati still have the incentive to kill you as a journalist. In fact, B, it's easier to kill you as a journalist because there aren't any armored vehicles, there aren't any bulletproof vests being donated to you by your government to protect you, right? And C, people on the ground, your fellow journalists, your fellow political strategies as we've met aren't going to be prepared enough to make sure you do the two tangible impacts as well. One, also carry out like your folders, allocate them properly into making sure you safeguard the future of journalism to make sure like other exposés not involving the Illuminati but other corrupt politicians also get carried on in the future. But two, as well, simply your principles as a journalist of always making sure you reveal the truth. It doesn't just have to be like, oh, I found out about this information, now I'm gonna reveal it tomorrow. We've met on timeline why you can plan for it for months or at least before the election strategically. Comparative on their end, they do not reveal that information at all, right? I think Gov wins because of the fact that we Jews do not assume the Illuminati is all good. We assume that it's necessary for you to not live with the regret of withholding this information, allowing the Illuminati to gather more power and cause more harm.